That's not what I want. I want this. Yes. So there is a question, when will be the minor quiz? We already released one minor quiz. You know, our minor quiz is every week and it's very lightweight. So we have already released the first quiz on Moodle and it's due tomorrow. It will take you maybe less than 10 minutes to solve. So just go ahead and give these quizzes. But the only thing it makes sure is that you have gone through the material once. Okay? And homework will make you work out things little more in detail. Okay, and those are the kind of basic questions that you will be asked in midterm and end term and major quizzes. So we're going to, my current plan is to have 2 major quizzes and then one midterm and one end term. And those are the ones which will carry grade apart from the minor quizzes. You know, minor quiz, you should be able to score very well if you just follow the things. Okay. Let's begin with this. So we continue with our study of deterministic finite state automata. Now, I had asked people if they are finding the speed okay, and for most people the speed is okay. We'll slightly change gear. We'll move slightly faster because we have a lot to cover, but I will get your feedback. So we can dynamically. So we continue with our study of finite state automata. Today we will finish the study of deterministic finite state automata. And we saw that languages were collections of words over a given alphabet. A word is a finite sequence of letters over the alphabet, right? And we define word as a set, language as a set of words. By giving some of its property, which can be written in this set builder notation by giving some property of the language. And we saw lots of examples. And then we did finite state automata, and then we considered questions like this. Given a language, you know, we ask the question, is there a deterministic finite automaton which recognizes the same language? So we saw how DFAs accepted or recognized words, you know, by having a run which ends up in a final state. So on every word, DFA has a unique run, and if that run ends up in a final state, we say that the word is accepted. And the collection of words which is accepted by a DFA is called its language. So given a language, we try to build a DFA for it. And given a DFA, we ask what is its language, right? So both kinds of transformations. I'm writing it this way, but it's same as that, right? And we're going to study 3 types of automata in this course with different powers, you know, different classes of languages that they can recognize. Okay, and we Okay, we saw these automata. So what I want to do is, I want to continue with examples of DFAs. Sometimes, you know, people give DFA by English sentences. Our alphabet for today's example is going to be fixed as the binary alphabet containing 2 letters A and B. So this is fixed for all these 3 examples. Okay, and the first language is collection of all words which have more than over A and B, which have 3 or more. I should say more or equal to. So this is not correct. Let's say 3 or more A. Okay, more than 3 can also be done. Is okay. So let's try to do these examples. So I will add a page after. Now I think for some of you this is becoming very easy, but still we will do this. Paper style is graph. Okay, now what is the language that we are trying to define? Remember, alphabet is AB, so we are trying to define all the words X, and I when I say X, I mean over the alphabet. So I'm not writing belonging to sigma star, such that the count of A in word X is greater than equal to 3, right? So it has at least 3 A's. In any possible position. So is the definition of that informal English by means of this this kind of language clear? This is one thing that you should be able to work out. And now we have to build an automaton for this. Okay, so that should not be very difficult either. So let's start. What will be the automaton looking like? Well, firstly, what we will do is we will have a state which remembers what is the count of A's seen so far. Now, you know, number of A's can grow unboundedly, you know, it can grow arbitrarily large, but all we care for is that whether it's less than equal to 3 or not, right? So what we will do is we'll count up to 3 and then saturate. So we'll have one state called S0, and the intuition is that when you are in S0, it corresponds to, you know, you will stay in S0 if the sequence of letters that you have seen so far, you know, so far count of A is equal to 0. That is, you have not seen any A so far, which means what? Either it's an empty word, so you start with this, and you have seen only B's so far, right? Now suppose an A occurs, then we have to somewhere record the fact that so far we have seen one A. So we'll go to state S1, and we can stay in this state S1. So we will go to this S1 on occurrence of a letter A, and then S1 denotes all those states where so far, you know, in the word, number of A is equal to 1, right? And that happens when the first A occurs, and then after that any number of B's occur, right? So this is where you stay. Still we have not finished, you know, a word up to here is not a member of our language. Then what we say is another A occurs, and we remember S2 again. So you know what S2 is going to be. So far we have seen 2 A's exactly, and then one more A, and now we are in state S3 where we have seen 3 A's, and then what we can do is after that if we see any more A, we can stay in S3 itself. So S3 will denote that, you know, so far we have seen 3 or more A's. So S3 says 3 or more A's, right? And of course, once you are in S3, whether an A or a B occurs, you know, that will only add to the count of A. So we can stay here. So is this automaton, the logic of it clear to people? I hope so. Okay. And when we design automata, typically it will have a number of states. And for each state, we should have an idea of, you know, when we are going to be in that state. And then in some of those states, we will get words which are in the language, and in some of the states we will get words which are not in the language. So this is the automaton for 3 or more A's. If there is any difficulty, please ask. Simple automaton, right? Remember, this allows A's to occur at any position in the word. So what are the typical words which can be in the language? B, A, B, B, A, B, A, right? This word will be in the language. Why? What you will do on first B, you will start with state S0. Let's do a run on this word, you know, of this automaton. So you will be in S0, and then a B will occur. So you will stay in S0 by following this arrow, right? And then on an A, you will go to S1, and then you've got 2 B's. So you will stay in S1, another B, you will stay in S1, another A occurs, you will go to S2. Okay. Then another A occurs after that. So you will go to S3, and then you will have a B which will keep you in S3, and another A which will also keep you in S3. And so on this word, we will have this run or this execution. The run is S0, S1, S2, S3. And the last state of this run is an accepting state, double circle state in this transition diagram. So this is an accepting run, and so this word is accepted. You can see it has got 4 A's, which is 3 or more A's. So I think I went a little slow here, but if there is any difficulty, please indicate on chat or, you know, ask. Okay. I'm going to move on. You will have. Okay. Here the 3 A's could occur anywhere. What we are saying is now we want all words where AA sequence AA occurs. So all 3 A occurs together somewhere within the word. So it has a subword AA within it, right? So let's try to define such a language. So what is it? How can I can define this language in the set builder form? Set of all strings over AB such that there exists YZ belonging to sigma star. So there exist 2 other strings YZ such that my word X can be broken into 3 parts. The first part is Y. Then you have got AA. Y may contain, you know, maybe arbitrary. And then you have Z. So basically within my word somewhere there is a subword or a factor, these are called factors also, which is AAA. So is the definition of the language clear to you? And this symbol is there exists. So you should get used to it. So there exist two strings. Till you can guess two strings. Given X, you can guess two strings Y, such that X has the following structure. String Y followed by A followed by Z. Right? So a typical example of something which is in the language would be something like A, B, A, B, B, A. Right? And here my string Y will be this and my string Z will be this, and A occurs. This Y and Z may not be unique. A can occur several times. But till I can find one Y and one Z such that the word can be factored like this, there will be multiple ways of factoring it. But till there is A as a factor or a subword, we say that X belongs to the language. Is this clear? Any difficulty? Please type in the chat. Okay. Now how do we build an automaton for this? So what again we will start by building it step by step. First we will have step as 0 where so I think I'm just going to draw that automaton. If an A occurs, I have a chance, okay. Till I have seen B's, I will stay only in S0s. If I see an A, it's a possible, I don't know the future. So far I have scanned an A. It is possible that two A's can occur after this. So there is I will record this by the fact that I have seen one A and now I am looking for immediate two A's following it in order to, get the substring AA. So I will have S1. Now at this point, if a B occurs, then I am not going to get a sequence of 3 A's at this point. So on a B, I will go back to S0 this time. On the other hand, if an A occurs, then I have seen two consecutive A's. So I record that by going to a state called S2. And the logic of S2 is that I have seen two consecutive A's in immediate past. At that point, if a B occurs, again I have to go back to S0 because it's a failed attempt. I have seen seeing A, B, and I must now start getting new A's. Right? But if I get an A, then I go to S3, and now I have got my subword A. After that, I don't care what happens. Right? So this is the kind of automaton I will get. So how many of them, how many of you get that this automaton will recognize languages with word A? In fact, this will transit from S0 to S3 on the first occurrence of AA. Although in the language, we didn't care which subword AA may occur several times. These AAs may even overlap, but we are catching the first occurrence of substring AA and we are moving to S3. Right? So this is the automaton. Any difficulty? Those who don't get this automaton, please type I did not understand in the chat. I have still not learned how to ask, take a poll where people can say yes or no. So if you have not understood this, please type are you able to hear me first of all? You have been very quiet for some time. Hello?
Yes, sir.
Yeah, you are able to hear.
Yes, sir.
Okay, yes, good. And there are no this thing. So people have understood this automata, which is very good. So I can then go a little faster. That's great. What was our third example? Yeah. We want all the words, over ABs where the count of A is even and the count of B is odd. So the language is clear to you. Somebody can help me write the language. Okay, I should add a page. Okay, so let me switch to red, keeping with the tradition. Yeah, all words X such that count of A in X is even. And what is the other condition? Sometimes we write AND by a symbol like this. Okay, so in future I will use this logical symbol for AND. Okay, and the count of B within X, remember this is count of A within X, this is count of B within X, is odd, right? Now in mathematics, we can also use mathematical syntax for this count is even and odd. We can write it like this. I mean, it's a funny notation, but they write it as this is equal to 0 mod 2. What do we mean by that? If you take this count of A and divide it by 2, the remainder is 0. And they write it in this funny way in number theory. And Cozen uses this later in the book. So I'm going to introduce this notation. So this, that it is even can be written as this. That is, count of A divided by 2 gives you remainder 0. That is modulo 2, count of A within X and 0 are equal. Okay. So the notation. Okay, Sujit Yadav had a question, but let me finish this description and then we can come back to this. And how can we say that count of B is even? We can say count of B is equal to 1 mod 2. What do we mean by that? That is same as saying that count of B is odd. That is, if you take the count of B and divide it by 2, you will be left with remainder 1. So I think you have to get used to notation like this, right? Okay. So this is how we define the language of all words where number of A's is even, including 0, and number of B's is odd. Okay, and we'll soon draw automata. By the way, Sujit asked why only this way. Why are we, probably his question is why we are matching with the first occurrence of A. That's not necessary. You can produce any other deterministic finite automaton which will recognize this language. Okay. Was that the question? Sujit, if there are any further doubts, please ask. Otherwise, I'll carry on. So we want to build an automaton for this. Now we have to remember, in order to build this automaton, we have to remember, the count of A as well as count of B. And of course, these counts can grow arbitrarily, for long words. But we don't have to remember everything about how many times A occurred. Maybe we only need to remember that the count of A is even or odd. And we also have to remember count of B, whether it is even or odd. So in this automaton, naturally you can build, an automaton with 4 states. First state is, S0, but it denotes that the count of A, divided by the remainder of count of A when divided by 2. That is, count of A modulo 2 is 0 and count of B modulo 2 is also 0. So both number of A's and the number of B's seen so far is even. And certainly for empty string that is true because these counts are 0. So the 0, 0, is my logic. It's not part of the name of the state. Okay, I am writing it for explanatory purpose. Okay, then we can have a S1 which says count of A is even but count of B is odd, and I write it by some sort of 0, 1. That is for my understanding. The name of the state is S1. This 0, 0 is not part of the definition of the automata. It is our logic. There is another state which says S2 where count of A is odd and the count of B is even. Okay, that I denote by 1, 0. And here I have state S3 where both are odd. Count of A is odd and count of B is odd. Now, if both counts have been even and if I get a B, then I will move to this state because then the count of B becomes odd. It was even, the second component says it was even and it becomes odd, right? On the other hand, if an A occurs, I move here. So is the logic of designing this automaton clear? From S1 on occurrence of A, where will I go? Count of B was odd and the count of A was even. And then I got one more A. So A also becomes, somebody say. So which on occurrence of A, where should I go from S1?
S3.
S3. Because both become odd. I hope the logic is getting clear to you. And for S2 on occurrence of a B, you will again move to S3, right? From S1 on another occurrence of B, what happens? Both will become even. So on another occurrence of B, you will move here. Here also on another occurrence of B, you will move there. On another occurrence of A, you will move here. On another occurrence of A, you will move here. And you can study this automaton, offline, you will see that this exactly characterizes the fact. In S0, both counts are even. In S1, A is even and B is odd. Here, A is odd and B is even, and here both are odd. And this automaton keeps track of, as it scans the string, so far, how many, whether number of A's is odd or even. Which is the final state we want? Which is the final state, anybody? Our condition is that count of A should be even and count of B should be odd. So which is the final, which are the final states?
S1.
Okay. Anything else? No. So this is the correct automaton. Okay. We've seen 3 examples. Okay. And I think this is the kind of things that you will be asked to work out in homework and in exams. Okay. Done. Okay, now we're going to do a little bit of theory. In computer science, we deal with general case. So I'm going to, so far, we said that a word is accepted by an automaton if there is a run on that word, which ends up in a final state. So you consider sequence of transitions which occur on letters of the word, and you say in the end where you are, right? So you are actually keeping track of the whole execution of the automaton on that word. But mathematically, we can abstractly define something bigger. We can ignore all the intermediate states and we can define what is called the extended transition function. Okay, so we can define what is called the extended transition function. Remember, so far the transitions were defined by giving this transition function delta, which took current state and the current letter and gave the state to which you move on that letter, right? So this was move on one letter. Now we are saying that we derive from this delta another function called delta hat, which will, from a state on a given string that is consisting of 0 or more letters, which is the state in which you will wind up, right? So the shape of the function is this. It takes a state and a word over alphabet as an argument. See, delta took only a single letter as an argument. This thing takes an arbitrary word as an argument, and it tells you the state in which you wind up. Starting from this. So delta hat of qx gives what? Starting from q, you start executing the automaton on this word x. So you will have a run of the automaton starting from q, not necessarily from the initial state, and at the end of this word x, you will wind up in some state, and that state will be given by delta hat q of x. So let me give an example. Again in red, this is the automaton, and I want to calculate delta hat starting from S1 over the string AA. What will happen? What is this state? So from delta hat says you start with S1, you play a kind of pebble game. Yes, there was a question about this automaton, which says in S0 both A's and B's are even, and in S3 both are odd. In S2 A is odd and B is even. So that's right. Vishal, yes, what you are saying is perfectly correct. So these are what are called, properties of state. So an invariance of state. That is, whenever you are in S1, this property will hold. So these are called state invariants. They are very important when you design the automaton. You have to understand what is the property of words which will lead you to that state. Okay, Vishal? So correct. Okay, let's continue with this. What is delta hat of S1AA? So we'll have to find a run of the automaton starting with S1 on A. Where will you go? From S1 on A, you will move to S3. Agreed? And then on another A, you will move to S1 back. So you will take this and then you will take this, right? So that is the execution on this word A starting from S1. And so the last state of that run is S1. And so the answer here is S1. On the other hand, delta hat of S1 on ABA will be what? So you have to guess the run S1 on A. You will move to S3. Then on a B, you will move to S2. And then on another A, from S2, you will move to S0. So delta hat of this is actually S0. So are these two computations clear to you? If there is any difficulty with this extended transition function, but you know the meaning of extended transition function, you should tell me. But you cannot give this delta hat as a truth table because there are infinitely many strings in sigma star, right? So you cannot build a table by which for every state and for every string what is the resulting. So we define this function delta hat mathematically by using you know some sort of induction, right? So we will define this function delta hat of qx by induction, and that definition is given here. But before I explain this definition, I want to take a diversion into what are inductive definitions. Okay, so let's start a new page. Every time I start a page, it gives me this wrong paper style and I'm not able to give default. Okay, fine. So what are inductive definitions? Let me first natural number induction. This is principle of induction that you learnt in school, maybe in 10th standard or something. And what is the principle? Suppose you want to prove that sum of first n numbers, that is sigma I from 1 to n, you know, is equal to I. Is equal to what? Somebody say? Just checking you are awake.
N into n plus 1 by 2.
Yeah. But how do we know this? We can check this. If you are doing software testing, you could build this method of computing this sum of I, but then you will have to, you know, give it, check it for n equal to 1, 2, 3. There are infinitely many numbers. So how do you know that this is the case for all n, right? And here this is for all symbol, huh? Just as we had there exists symbol, this is for all. I will use that a lot in this course. So this property we claim holds for every natural number. So we give its proof using principle of induction, right? I'm not teaching you how to prove this. I mean, you know all that. I'm teaching you the method and how we will extend this method and in this course. So proof by induction on n, right? And so this becomes, since we want to prove this for all n, for a given n, this becomes the induction hypothesis, right? And we prove it by giving a base step, which is n equal to 0. And so when you substitute 0 equal to n, what you get is LHS. I'm writing this in great detail. Sigma I going from 1 to 0. That is, you don't sum up any number because I is already greater than 1. Or I can, yes, let me start this by 1. No, you will be a little more comfortable. I start this by 1, right? I. So I just have to equal to 1 is equal to 1 into 1 plus 1 divided by 2 equal to RHS, right? So base step is easy. I'm not teaching you how to prove this by induction, but look at the format of this. And then there is an induction step, right? An induction step, you are trying to prove LHS for n plus 1. So LHS is what? Sigma I equal to 1 to n plus 1. You know, this is equal to what? N plus 1 plus sigma I equal to 1 to n of I. Agreed? Why is this true? So I will write down the reason for this last equality as maybe in red, property of sigma, right? Summation. Here this sigma is different from alpha beta. This is summation in arithmetic. Now we know that this is equal to what? N plus 1 plus n into n plus 1 by 2. We claim that this is equal to this by induction hypothesis, because we assume that the property holds for the natural number before n plus 1, that is simpler natural number, and assuming that we will prove it for n plus 1. So this is induction hypothesis. Remember all this, right? And then you can simplify this using arithmetic. Take this 2 and this will turn out to be n plus 1 into n plus 2 by 2. You can do this simplification. This is by arithmetic, by algebra, right? So this is the proof. You have proved LHS equal to RHS. Okay, and this principle is widely used to prove a lot of arithmetic identities. But why does this principle work? It works because we know that every natural number can be obtained from 1, which is the simplest natural number, or 0, right? And by adding 1 to it. So every time we take a natural number, it can be. So let me add a slide. I think I want to give you a little bit of understanding of what is going on here in general. And then this principle can be generalized to many other things. So natural numbers. Okay, it has a 0, which is the simplest natural number. And there can be some simplest natural number. And then there is construction. Given n, we can add 1 to it and take successor of n, where successor of n is equal to n plus 1. So given any number n, we can take its successor, and any natural number can be constructed from simpler natural numbers by applying the successor operation. So successor is called the constructor. Yeah, okay, and there is for every natural number there is a construction sequence. So if you want 3, what you can do is you can define 3 as 0, you apply successor to it, you get successor of 0, which is 1, and then you apply successor to 1, that is successor of 0, which will give you 2, and then you apply successor of 0. So this will give you number 3, and any number can be obtained by somebody saying S3. Are you asking questions about older things or Vishal? I think you should unmute and ask.
Yes, sir. Oh, that was for the earlier one.
Yeah, so we can go
even and odd one.
This one?
It's clear, sir. It's clear. We were just answering.
Okay, good. Good. So let's move in. Yeah. Okay. So do you agree that every natural number can be constructed from 0 by successive application of successors? So, natural numbers, every natural number has a construction sequence, right? Sequence, and this construction is done by adding 1 to the natural number, right? And there is a unique construction sequence. No two different construction sequences will give you different same number. Unique construction sequence. Yeah. So given these two properties, natural numbers are said to be inductively defined from 0 using the constructor successor. This is what mathematicians will say. Just some terminology, don't worry, right? And this set of natural numbers they call it freely generated, which means what? They have a unique construction sequence. Every number has a unique construction sequence. And because that is the case, the set of natural numbers is inductively defined using 0 and plus 1 function, which is successor. You can prove its property by first proving the property for 0 or basis element. In this case, I have taken it as 1. Some people take set of natural numbers as 1, 2, 3, 4. Some take it as 0, 1, 2, 3. Okay, here I have taken it as 1. So you prove it for the simplest natural number, and then assuming that it holds for simpler natural number, you prove it for the next element which is constructed out of it. And this way you will have proved it for all possible natural numbers, right? So this is the logic of this, right? So is the logic of why this principle of induction works clear? That is because natural numbers are constructed from 0 by using plus 1. which is applied successively. Now we can apply the same principle to strings, words over sigma, right? So words over sigma can be thought of as being made out of epsilon. This is the simplest element, the basis element or the base element, string. And what is the operation that you apply? Given a string S, X, you can catenate it by a letter A, right? And so there is one constructor which will append A to it, one constructor which will append B to it, right? So suppose we have got two letters in the alphabet, there will be two constructors. One will add an A at the end of X and one will add a B at the end of X, right? So basically every string can be constructed by successively appending either an A or B to epsilon. So for example, if you've got a string A, B, A, okay, what will be the construction sequence which will do this? You take epsilon and then what do? You append an A after this. So you will get epsilon dot A, which is same as A. Empty string followed by A gives you A. And then what do? You append this string by a B. So you will get epsilon dot A dot B. So to that simpler string you appended B. Now to that, so that will give you string epsilon AB, and to that you append an A, and then so you will get so if I simplify it, I will get ABA, and then I will again append an A to it, and what I will get is ABA dot A, right? So I will get my full string here. So you see every string is obtained by successively catenating a single letter to it, right? And that is there is only a unique way in which you can get a string by appending a letter at the end, right? So set of words sigma star is inductively defined from epsilon, which are called its basis elements, by constructors which append either A to it or B to it. For any alphabet, you will have as many constructors as the number of letters, right? And hence we get the following principle of induction for strings, or let me write it in red, very important. Principle of structural induction on strings, right? The principle is this. Suppose you want to prove that for all strings in, I hope you are able to see this. Are you able to see this? No, let me erase it and write little bigger. We are having, I should remember this is for all X belonging to sigma star. We want to prove that some property of that string X is true. Here I am not telling you, I am giving an abstract definition. In order for all natural numbers, some property of natural numbers true. Here for all strings, some property is true. To prove that, you will have to first do a base step, which shows what is the base step. I will write it in red, that you have to prove that the property is true for the string epsilon. That is, for the simplest string, the property is true, right? This is one thing you have to prove. What is the other thing you have to prove? You have to do the induction step. So you'll be seeing examples. You will be using, and what is induction step? You can assume that the property holds for string X, right? And you want to prove that from this imply means you assuming this, you prove that the property holds for larger string XA, and this you prove for every A belonging to the alphabet. That is, if you assume that the property is true for simpler string X, then if I extend that string by any letter A, then the property continues to hold. This is the induction step. See, in natural number, if the property held for n, assuming that, you are proving that the property holds for n plus 1. Here you are saying that if it holds for string X, it will hold for string extended by a single letter. So a slightly longer string will also satisfy the property. And every such extension with one letter will satisfy the property. And since you are proving this implication for every possible x, this conclusion follows. So is the principle of structural induction for strings clear to you? We will use this in a moment. Other thing you can do is, because strings are, sorry, I need to have one more page. Over strings. But first, let me give you an example of definition of function over natural numbers. So I want to define a function called 2 for natural number n. I want to define what is 2 to the n, right? We did this in a first class actually. So how do we define this? We can define, because natural numbers are inductively constructed, we first define power of 2 for natural number 0. What will this be? This is 1. This is the base step of definition. And then we inductively define power of 2. Let me go again. For n plus 1, how will I define it? I will define it in terms of power of 2 for n. So I will inductively assume that I know how to calculate power of 2 for natural number n, and then I'll tell you how to calculate it for the next constructed natural number, right? And these two bullets, completely define this power of 2 function, right? And this is the induction step in the definition of the power of 2 function. So this is induction step. Is the idea clear to you? These are big ideas in mathematics, although they are very simple, they are very widely used ideas in mathematics. Okay, so the scheme should be clear to you. Why we are recursively or inductively able to define this power of 2? We can give it by, firstly its definition for the simplest natural number, and for every way of constructing a new natural number from simpler one, you give a way of, defining the power function in terms of its simpler components. So you are recursively defining these things, and this kind of recursive definitions, give you a unique function power of 2. Okay. Okay, what has this to do with strings? You want to define a function f, let's say from sigma star to natural number, and let this function be called length. What is the length of the string, right? Let's call this length, which will give the length of the string. How can we define it? Again, we know strings are made out of epsilon by adding an a to a given string, right? Either it's an epsilon or it's a simpler string x followed by some letter a belonging to alphabet, right? So we will define length inductively using, inductively just as we did it. This is, so we will say length of epsilon is what? Equal to what? This is the base case. Simplest string gives you the answer 0, and I can define length of xa. My alphabet, let's say, is equal to AB. I have 2 letters. So length of xa is equal to 1 plus length of x, right? And length of xb is also equal to 1 plus length of x. And these 3 equations completely define the length, because every string over alphabet AB is either epsilon or it's made out of simpler string by appending either an A or a B. So is the scheme of things clear? So given inductive definition of strings, we can define new functions, by induction like this, or we can prove properties of strings using induction rules like this, and that is what we are going to see here. So what we have here is this function delta hat. Okay, principle of induction is clear to you. It's a big topic, very widely used, perhaps the most used mathematical technique in this course. And this technique is applicable not only to define, what are strings, but as we will see in the course, they will be used to define the set of grammatically correct C programs, or the, many other types of sets. So this principle is going to become very, very useful in the course, and you must understand it well. So I will give you 1 minute to answer whether this two, for a set of strings, the principle of structural induction to prove properties of strings is clear, and how to define functions over strings is clear. This is by induction on the structure of the strings. This is the scheme of things, and we'll see an example in a moment. Questions? I would have expected some questions. I think some people are very quiet, and I think it is important that you clear the doubts here, because these are slightly tutorial classes too. Okay, you can ask in a minute. So what we are going to do is, first we are going to define this function delta hat. What was the meaning of delta hat? Starting from delta hat of qx, where x is a string, tells you starting from q, if you consider the run of the automaton on the word x, what is the last state that you end up in? And we gave two examples. Delta hat starting from s1 on word a will give you what? You start with s1, do first a, which will take you to s3, and then do another a, it will bring you back to s1. So at the end you are in s1, and the answer is s1 after a gives you s1 back. S1 after aba gives you what? You start with s1, on an a you will go to s3, then on another b you will go to s2, by this arrow, and then on another a you will get to s0. So with this run you will wind up in s0 after string aba starting from s1, and hence delta hat of s1 aba is s0, right? But I mean, how to give this function? There are infinitely many strings. So we use that induction. Just as we define length of an arbitrary string of arbitrary length, we'll define delta hat starting from a state on an arbitrary string. And we will first do the base step. So here I have base step, which says that delta hat of q on epsilon, which means you have not made any move, and you start from q0, you will remain in q0. So this is the base step of the function definition. And then what we say is we want to define delta hat of q on a longer string ua, where u is a simpler word. U belongs to sigma star, right? Okay, so for any such, for all u belonging to sigma star, we want to define what is delta hat of q on word ua, that is u extended with a. Well, what we can do is we can first calculate delta hat of q on u. This is the state in which you will wind up starting from q, consuming the word u. You will be in some state, and from that state you will take one more step on letter a, and that will give you, that is using the definition of normal delta, not delta hat. So here we are in red, we are recursively using delta hat for simpler string q, and using the delta which is given for the automaton, we are constructing delta hat of ua. So is this definition clear to you?
Yes,
See, we are in that.
Yes.
Yes, using the simpler, and claim is that this defines delta hat of u on any string uniquely, right? Because we can successively recursively apply these equations and calculate what is delta hat of u for any a, right? Okay, and with this definition of delta hat, we have an alternative definition, in fact much more useful definition of what is a word accepted by an automaton. A word x is accepted by an automaton if you start with the initial state q0 and string x takes you to a final state, that is delta hat of qx gives you the state after x starting from the initial state, and if that state belongs to the final state, then clearly we will accept that word. So a word is accepted by an automaton if and only if delta hat of q0x belongs to fn. This is an alternative. So we don't talk about runs, we directly talk about delta hat. See, in this definition of delta hat, we never talked about run. We talked about this extended transaction function only, which was defined inductively by these two equations. We didn't have to take that sequence of transitions or anything, right? We had this recursive definition of delta hat. And this is it. And what is the language of the automaton? Set of all words such that those words are accepted by the automaton by this definition. So we say such that delta hat of Q0x belongs to F. So is this alternative definition clear?
Yes.
Okay,
Sir,
we
what
are
is
getting a
F?
little more abstract.
Sir,
Yes.
what
Yes.
is F? Where is the
F is the set of final states. Sorry, you are absolutely correct. I should have reminded you. For the automaton, we will fix, whenever we are talking about an automaton, we'll fix this notation. Q, capital Q will denote its set of states, sigma its alphabet, delta its transition, Q0 initial state, and F this. So we are all defining all this for a given automaton, which is like this. Always, we have fixed that notation. Okay.
Okay, sir.
So I should have reminded you. Yes, it's important. So whenever I was talking about delta hat, I was talking with respect to given delta, for the automaton that you are given. This delta hat is for a given automaton, which fixes delta, and we make use of that delta to define the delta hat for that automaton. So this is for a given automaton here. An automaton will always be assumed to be phi tuple, which looks like this: delta Q0 and Q0 and F. I have made a slight departure in Cozen. Instead of Q0 he writes, but that's okay. So simple this thing. So now it is clear. Do you accept
Yes,
this definition of word being accepted by an automaton? Instead of defining run, we can directly define it on delta hat. If you have understood that, then you are okay. So those who have not understood, please type no in the chat. I want to see. No, but I don't want one or two answers. Those who have not understood this ticked sentence, please type no. Because I do need some feedback on, how many have not understood. They should raise their hand. Okay, there are none. So maybe I'm going very slow, but this is the definition. Okay, we did that. Now we can use this to prove properties of delta hat. So here is, and we saw this principle of structure. So this was also definition of the function by structural induction, delta hat function by structural induction. Now we will prove some properties of this delta hat function that we define. And one property is that delta hat of Q on a string X followed by Y, X catenated with Y. I've written it in different colors just to highlight, is same as delta hat of, first you compute delta hat of Q on X, that will wind up in some state, and from that state you do another application of delta hat on string Y, and this too will give you the same answer. Why is that the case? Because delta hat of Q on X will give you what? Starting from Q, you will have a run following several steps on string X, which will wind up with some state Q prime, right? And delta hat of Qx will give you that Q prime. And then another delta hat applied to that Q prime, on Y, right? Which is a run starting from Q hat on Y will take you to some state, let us say Q double prime, right? So what I'm saying is delta hat of Q on XY, is Q double prime. That is, it is same as taking delta hat of Q on X, which is starting from Q. I do a run on X and I wind up with Q prime. And then starting from that Q prime, I do a run on Y and I wind up with delta Q double prime. So I get this, right? So that is the way in which I have defined this, and that intuitively obvious, but how do we give a proof? So one of the things that we want to teach you in this course is how to write proofs. And so let me clear this page. Where is clear page? Clear, delete layer. Yeah, okay. So I'm going to do this proof by induction on string Y, which is what? I will prove it for Y equal to epsilon, and I will prove it for all strings of the form Y is of the form Z followed by letter A for A belonging to the alphabet. For every A belonging to the alphabet, if Y is of the form Z followed by A, then I will prove that this property holds, right? So I will do a base step. Okay, so what is the base step? My LHS is equal to what? Delta hat of, oh sorry, let me write it a little better. So base step is for the case where y is equal to epsilon, right? For that case, I need to prove the theorem. This is the theorem we want to prove. So we take it as induction hypothesis and prove it first for the simplest string epsilon, and then we prove it for all strings of the form ZA, where we assume that Z satisfies this theorem. We prove that Y also will satisfy this theorem. So base step Y is equal to epsilon. So what is my LHS? LHS equal to delta hat of Q X and Y, which is epsilon, which is equal to delta hat of Qx, right? Because X epsilon is same as X. And that is equal to what? I will keep this red term as it is. So delta hat of Q X, this will give me some state, right? And then I will apply delta hat. Okay, let me write that second application of delta hat. Sorry, I have not completed the statement. Wait for a moment for color change. Yeah. So I will apply delta hat to this state with string epsilon. And remember, my definition is that my definition of epsilon is that for any state, if I take delta hat of epsilon, I will get back the same state. So here, when I apply delta hat of epsilon to this state, I will get back this state, right? And this is my RHS. This is nothing but my RHS, right? So I will write this equal to RHS. So base step is proved. It's a simple sequence of 4 equalities using the definition. And this step, delta hat equal to RHS, this step, going from, let me write in yellow, this step going from here is by definition of delta hat. Okay. So you should see this proof, read this offline. We are going to do induction step now. And let me add a page for that. Oh God, so here I lost the style. And what are we trying to prove? We are trying to prove. What are we trying to prove? Delta hat on Q from Q over string XY is same as first you run calculate delta hat of from Q on X, whatever state you wind up, then calculate another delta hat from that state on Y. So you are applying delta hat to simpler strings X and Y and getting the answer, right? And we did base step taking Y to be external. So for induction step, I'm continuing the proof from the previous slide, right? I did the base step here. Now I'm doing induction step. Induction step is for Y of the form simpler string Z followed by A, right? For any A in the alphabet. So what will be my LHS? Equal to delta hat of Q on X, and Y is actually of the form ZA, right? So I'm applying delta hat to the string X followed by ZA, right? This will be equal to what? Now what is the definition of delta hat? Let's go back to definition of delta hat. Delta hat, when applied to a string UA, where A is a letter, is of the form first you calculate delta hat of Q on string U and then apply delta, the transition function of the automaton, to that state on letter A, right? Here also we have a string. Here also we have a string which ends with a letter A, and so we can apply the definition of delta hat. What we will get is delta of, first you apply delta hat starting from Q to the string XZ, and whatever state you wind up with, you apply delta to this on A. And this is, how do we get this? By definition of delta hat, right? We just use the definition of delta hat to get this equality. Okay, I continue. This is equal to what? This will give me delta. Now what I'm going to do is I'm going to rewrite this one. Okay, rest is going to remain the same. So I'll first copy the rest, and then this delta hat Q and XZ, I'm going to expand using induction hypothesis, because for simpler strings X and Z, I can assume that this theorem holds, right? So what can I write there? Anybody guess? I can write delta hat of delta hat from Q on X, and this on Y. Remember, how do I get this green term? Above green term is written as right term. I just apply this theorem on simpler string XZ. By induction hypothesis, I can assume that for XZ I will get this right hand side. Where Y is substituted by Z, right? So I've just written this string by this. So this step I'm getting by induction hypothesis. I can assume this is true, and then I can prove the overall theorem. And my claim is, oh sorry, I have not completed the statement, comma A, of course, the rest of it. So this green is written by this green, and the rest remains as it is. This subterm I've substituted by this using induction hypothesis. And then what do I get? Now here I have got a delta hat. Let me underline it in red. I have got a delta followed by delta hat, and this delta is with letter A, and delta hat is on this string Y. Yes.
Hello. So
Hello?
why there is Y? There should be
Oh,
Z.
sorry. I apologize. It's a Z. Somebody is awake. Thank you. That's a Z. That's in black. That's a Z. You are absolutely right. My bad. Now it's okay? Somebody said no.
Yes, sir.
Yes, sir.
Okay, somebody didn't understand the inductive definition, right? Okay, let's complete this and then I'll go back to that. Okay, now what have we got? Look at this whole term. It is of the following form. There is a delta hat on some string Z, right? To some state. It doesn't matter what this state is. That state may be obtained by applying delta hat, but it is of the form delta hat on string Z, and then a delta is being applied to that state on an A. So this looks a little bit like this. Yes, it looks a little bit like this. There is a delta hat and then a delta with an A, right? So we can replace this right hand side by the left hand side. Agreed? And that is what I'm going to do. So you will have to study this proof, afterwards. But it's easy. It's just that you have to keep those definitions before you. This proof is, by the way, given in. This is not there in Cozen. So, but this will give you delta hat of this. This inside thing will remain as it is. Delta hat of Q on X, and then this Z and A will come together, and you will get Z dot A, right, which is my RHS. And why is this? This is from the brackets are matching. Yes. So this is, and this step is by definition of delta hat only. I don't use it. So on right hand side, whenever I do a derivation, on right hand side I write justification, right? Why this step is allowed. We will very often write proofs in this kind of calculational style. I mean, the great thing about Cozen is he gives very simple proofs like this. So you saw this theorem. We have proved the induction step. We have proved the base step. And hence this theorem holds for all xy. For all strings xy, this property is true. And for all state q also, this property is true. Okay. That is our proof by induction. So your first example of a proof, this function delta hat was defined inductively, using the, by sometimes what is called by structural induction on strings, and this theorem, this is a theorem, was proved using principle of induction. That is, we proved it for the base step, assuming y to be equal to epsilon, and then we proved it for inductively for y equal to ZA, you know, assuming that it holds for simpler y equal to Z. This is the method. Okay. Okay, I want to do one last thing. Sorry, there was a question on the chat. Abir Bishwas, Abir, yes, there was a question where you had some difficulty with this inductive definition of this
Sir,
delta
I
hat.
got it.
You got it. Excellent.
Yeah.
Excellent. Yeah, there is, you know, one thing that you have to do in computer science, and I treat you at par with computer science. I mean, you are all minor students are computer science students. You will get a minor degree in it. So you have to get little bit comfortable with notation. Ideas are simple, but they are encoded in these notations. And, you know, this is the science behind those ideas of executions of automata on runs, which are written in notation like this. So I think study this a little bit, and soon you will be very, very comfortable with this notation. And then this notation gives you great power going ahead. Okay, so great, you got it. Wonderful. Yeah, remember, this is an inductive definition. We define it for the base case and we define it for the induction step, right? So functions are defined using induction or structural induction, and properties like this are proved using structural induction. Two uses of inductive definitions. And this is the most used technique in this course and widely in computer science. Okay, so that is all. Next, what I'm going to do is I'm going to give you a certain way of constructing larger automata given simpler automata. So you can, you know, soon using some operators, you know, build very large automata using, you know, smaller automata. It's just like we have given simple circuits and we build an assembly of a large using them to get a larger circuit. Or if you're given simpler mechanical components, we assemble them and we get a larger component. Or, you know, we are given simple, you know, members, some I sections or some L section, you know, so, and we build a bridge out of components. Similarly, given component automata, yeah, we will construct new automaton using them. Okay, and that gives you great power in writing out. So every time you don't have to keep drawing those graphs. You can say I have this component whose graph is this, I have another component, and then I combine these two automata in this way to give me a larger automaton. So it's a convenient way of defining new automata, right? And first thing we will do is we'll define what is called a complement automaton. Okay, so you are given an automaton M1, you know, which is an arbitrary automaton. So it is a phi tuple like this. You know, its set of states is Q, its alphabet is sigma, its transition function is delta, its initial state is Q0, and its set of states is called F1. Right? Now we are given such an M1. What we want to do is we want to define another automaton which will recognize the complement of a language. Now what is a complement? You all know what is complement of a language, right? So complement of a language A is you take sigma star and subtract language A from it. That is set of all words belonging to sigma star such that X does not belong to A. Right? Sorry, I will write it better. Please wait. Such that X does not belong to A. Right? So all words which are not in the language A are included in complement of A. Right? And complement is always taken with universe sigma star. I mean, A is a language over alphabet sigma. So complement of A is also a language over sigma star. And it contains all the words which are not in A. So is the idea of complement of a language clear? We did this before, but I'm just reminding you. Okay, so let me erase this layer. Or before I erase this layer, let me do this. So what we have given this automaton M1 and it will have some language L of M. And what we want to do is we want to build an automaton which will recognize the complement of its language. So is the scheme clear? You are given M1, it is an arbitrary automaton. At this point, we don't even know what it is. It's just given by this phi tuple. And we want to build another automaton M2 which will recognize its complement. And the construction is like this. We construct M2 again as a phi tuple where its set of states is same Q. So whatever was the set of state of M1 is the set of states of M2. Same alphabet, of course. Transition function also does not change. Start state also does not change. So these 4 parts are exactly identical to M1. But the set of final states is different. And that's why I've written it in red. So the set of final states of M2 is something called F2, whereas here it was F1. And F2 is defined as 2. F2 consists of all states of the automaton which are non-final. That is, all the final states you remove from Q and you get the set F2. This set difference, I hope you know. That is, given set Q, remove all the elements which are in F and you get F2. So minus is from the first set, remove all the elements of the second set. I hope you are familiar with that set theoretic notation. Maybe I will define it here. For those who don't remember, set AB, A minus B is what? X such that X belongs to A and X does not belong to B. That is, from set A, subtract all the elements of B. Some of the elements may not be in A, so when you subtract it, it doesn't have any effect. But basically, this is it, right? So this is called set difference operator. And we have defined F2 like this. Yes, there was a question.
Sir. Hello.
I am not able to hear you.
Hello.
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 Yes, ask the question.
Yes, sir. So A is belongs to epsilon, right? Sigma. A belongs to
A is
sigma.
over alphabet sigma, of course.
So how the A will contain, sigma star will not contain A, right? So how we subtract
No,
A from sigma star?
what is A? A is a language over sigma, right? Which means what? A is a subset of sigma star, some arbitrary subset of sigma star, right?
Okay, sir.
Yeah.
Okay.
So, okay, something about the notation. For automata, I will use M1, M2 because these are machines, you know. And for sets, I will use ABC. This is Cosen's convention, the textbook that you are using. And so that is what we will use. Okay. So for a given set A, a language over alphabet sigma, complement of A is defined as this. Right. Now it's clear?
Yes, sir.
Okay. So I am unfortunately going to have to erase this, right? So is the construction of M2 clear? All we do is we take this M1 and substitute its set of final states by set of non-final states, right? So we have this new automaton because F component has changed, right? Now remember that only F has changed. So both of them have the same transition function, M1 and M2. So I can denote the transition function of the first automaton M1 as delta hat of M1 and that of second as delta hat of M2. That is, they are same as this delta hat, right? They are the same, right? So now, given that property, I want to prove that my automaton M2, which I have constructed like this, you know, I have done this surgery to this automaton. You know, if I was given the graph, every state which was double circled, I will erase and I will circle all the non-double circle states. So I will exchange circled and double circle state. That is what I am doing when I move from M1 to M2. And the claim is this operation on the transition diagram will give me the complement language. This is what this theorem says. So is the notion of the theorem clear? So what I will do is I will actually prove this theorem, and the proof is also by a proof is very simple. So I'm going to write that proof here in red. So how does the proof go? Suppose I want to say that X belongs to L of M2. This symbol means if and only if. So this equivalence runs both backwards and forwards. This statement is equivalent to this. X belongs to M2. By definition is what? Can anybody tell me what is the definition of this? Delta hat of, what should I write? You start with the starting state Q0 and you run this string X. When will it belong to M2? Belongs to F2. Do you agree with this? This is by,
yes, sir.
By definition of delta language, right? but this is equivalent to, oh sorry, I apologize, I have colors are wrong. I'm trying to follow some consistency in colors. This is equivalent to delta hat of Q0x, does not belong to F1, right? Do you agree? Because F1 is just the complement of F2. All the states which are not in F2 is F1, right? By construction, by definition of F2. Agreed? Because F2 is just the complement
Yes, sir.
of, this should be F1. I'm sorry, there was F1 missing. And this is equivalent to saying what? X. Oh, okay, please bear with this blue color. No, let me follow. Same color is equivalent to what? X does not belong to language of M1. Agreed? Because delta hat of Q0 on X takes you to a final state, then the string is in the language. And if it does not take you to a final state of the automaton, it is not in the language. So this simple 4-line proof tells you this is again by the definition of language. Oh, that should be in blue. I wanted to do one more construction, but I think we are running out of time. Language, right? So this simple proof, are you able to follow? And the beauty of Cosen's book is he gives this very simple, equivalence proofs with simple justifications. You don't find such proofs very easily, in other textbooks. So, which is why I have chosen Cosen for you. So I think today you met with some properties. This is one construction. Now I can do one more construction, what is called product construction, but it will take 5-7 minutes. Rather than that, I will defer that for the next class. Okay. So we are not doing what is called the product construction. We have done just the complement construction. We've gone through several things. We've given, what did we do in today's class? Let me add a page. First is we did examples of DFA from languages, right? We did 3 examples. Then we did extended transition from the transition function delta hat. And we gave inductive definition of delta hat. Right? So we studied the principle of structural induction. In order to do this, we studied structural induction on strings. And then we did some proofs using it, right? For that XY, delta hat of XY, we did some proofs. And finally, we did one construction of complement. We'll do some more constructions next time on DFA, and that will finish the topic of DFA. Construction on DFA. We started with this topic. So this is what we do in today's lecture. If there are any questions, you can ask on the QA channel. Are you able to access the QA doubt channel on Teams? I think you will be able to, and you should be able to ask questions there. But if I think it is 54, so we should officially close the class. But for those of you who want to ask right away, you can. Okay. So this is what we did today, these 5 things. Okay, if there are any questions, one last chance to ask them by audio or by chat, or you can ask them even offline using the doubt channel. Thank you. Please study. Yes.
Like that had a doubt over here. Why do we at all define the extended transition function? I mean, wasn't the delta function like sufficient?
Yes, it is sufficient. In fact, delta hat is uniquely defined using delta. But the proofs become much simpler using delta hat. Either 2 proofs that I gave, otherwise you'll have to talk about runs on a word, using delta gives you a run of the automaton on a word, right? And you'll always be arguing on those runs. So the old style textbooks on automata theory used only delta, but actually the proofs become much simpler using delta hat. So it's a mathematically more simpler and more sophisticated approach. Okay, that's the reason.
Yes, sir.
But you are absolutely right. Delta hat is uniquely defined from delta. And everything we do in delta hat is actually implied by the corresponding delta. So mathematicians always do that. If you are allowed to make recursive definitions, you can given successor, you can define plus by successively doing addition by 1, addition by 1, and you can do multiplication by doing successive additions, and you can do power by doing successive multiplication. So like that, delta hat has been defined inductively from delta, and it's useful to have these more complex functions, just as in arithmetic. They can all be defined using just successor, using recursive definitions. So this is the whole idea of that primitive recursive definitions of Gödel, which I gave in the introductory class, that very simple functions you start with. You can build a vocabulary of very complicated functions by doing inductive definitions. He was also doing definitions inductively. Go back to that class and see the slide. Similarly, from delta, we have inductively built this more complex function delta hat, and we can now do, more complex things easily using it. So good question.
Thank you, sir. Thank you.
Yeah. Okay, I would normally expect you to at least, scan through the slides of the previous class before the next class, because otherwise, things are not going to be accessible. Okay. So that is a request from this thing. It shouldn't take you a lot of time. I'm doing very little in a class, so I think it shouldn't take you too much time. Okay. And some homework about DFA will be released very soon. So for the deterministic finite automata, you will have to start doing homework. Okay, and that will make you pakka about the subject matter, and that is what you will be typically asked in exams. Thank you. So I'll stop the recording.